Okay, we're all set.
All right, let's go ahead and call it to order, and you'll give us a roll call, correct?
Mr. Whaley,
Here.
Mr. Griffiths,
Here.
Mr. Meinzer, Mr. Schultz, Mr. Truca, Miss Yandel,
Here.
and Ms. DeFreitas.
Here.
Okay.
All right, did everybody get a chance to review the minutes?
Yep.
Yep.
Is there any questions or anything of that nature? And I believe we need to vote on these. Is that correct?
Yep. Need a motion?
All right,
I move that we approve the minutes as recorded.
I second that. And now we are on to election of officers, correct?
Yes.
All right, since this will be the first time we've done this, do I just go ahead and nominate? Well, I nominate Mr. Griffiths for chair. And I would need a second for that?
Correct, yeah.
I will second that.
Your chair.
We need a vote.
And now we got to vote.
Congratulations.
I was way too excited. Mr. Griffiths? You can do can you do yourself? And
I would just do a roll real quick.
You
Just
can
do a
probably
roll
just say
call.
all in favor. say
all
aye.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I heard Kima,
Okay.
okay. And then what about for vice chair?
Vice
We need
President,
a-
I nominate Mr. Truca, who I've spoken to and wishes to be nominated.
I second that.
So all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So I have the con, as they say.
You have the helm, sir.
All right, so, find the agenda here. Okay, we're doing old business first, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Old business. Go ahead.
So this is an update from what was previously approved at our November meeting. The applicant is here. Staff has put together an updated report, give you a summary of the project and the building itself to start off with. So this is a certificate of appropriateness for the sign changes at the old winery building at 220 Water Street. It is a contributing structure in the downtown Sandusky Commercial Historic District. It was built in 1934, and it was originally called the Ingalls and Krudwig Building. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Some images. So we're here to, like I had mentioned, to update the sign. There are two sign options proposed on the 11/17/21 meeting. Sign option A was an internally illuminated wall sign with face forward lighting. Option B was externally illuminated floating backlit halo lettering. Option B's design and lighting was approved on November 17th of 21's meeting. The applicant has come back for further analysis. The sign's design and mounting method approved in November's meeting has been updated with concerns from the applicant. The external lighting has stayed the same from the approval, though. So in an email, the applicant has stated this to staff. In order to mount the said approved sign, metal tubing structure is needed to create a floating backlit halo lettering. The contractor said we need to grind away a large section, roughly two sections of the historic limestone facade in order to create a flat mounting area to secure the plates welded to the metal tubing on the front of the building to create the strength necessary to hold the tubing properly. And the applicant stated that he wants to try to avoid further destroying the historic integrity of the building further if this can be avoided. So an option C has been proposed, which on the screen here is the new proposal. And it's kind of a hybrid between option A and option B from the November meeting, with the fact that it's the option B lighting with the option A design, so it'd still be externally halo lit, but have a backdrop as in option A's proposal from November. So staff's recollection of November's meeting is that it was voted down not based on design, but based on the fact that it was internally illuminated. So based on that, staff recommends approval of the proposed sign option C in this case. with the following conditions, and that's that all permits are obtained through the building, engineering, and planning departments, and then the sign illumination must be externally illuminated as it was previously approved.
Put that on option C.
Sure.
We heard concerns, so we talked internally to Mr. Griffiths, so I think had talked to Mr. Trupka. Was wondering wanted a little bit more information on how it would be attached to the building. And it looks like the applicant has brought us a little bit more information just this morning, which we can add to the file after the meeting about showing how this design can be mounted as is to the building without affecting the rough surface of the limestone.
Correct. And if I can shed just a little extra on it, so going back with Brady signs as well, some of the other concern that popped up yesterday or this week was that, so on this building, the same halo lettering with the tubing structure is much higher, it's out of the way. The height of our sign, if we did that tubing structure, it's like a grab bar for anybody that's had a drink or two to just try to do a pull-up on. So that was thus the second concern, but it's not as aesthetically a problem. But the first problem is grinding away the stone that we've just fixed. And this would be able to float on top of the brick, even though it's a rough limestone. But the water would be able to trickle just as it has for years, right behind the sign, because we won't be flattening the brick at all. So.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
So essentially, if that sign this way, if it ever did need to be removed, really you'd only have just a few holes to
Correct.
to fill in, correct?
Mm-hmm. It's just a tap con straight to the brick, and you'd be able to remove it, replace it, not, even if you didn't want a sign there, it looks still original.
Cool.
Okay, just two questions for me. One, do you know how long the tap cons will be?
I don't, that would be on my contractor, I apologize.
Okay,
But,
if you could just get back to staff on that.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't want anything that's penetrating through the wall.
yeah, I got like a good 18 inches worth of center block and limestone to deal with, so.
If you just let staff know that, what the depth of those tap cons would be. And then the second question I have is, given this design, do you have any concerns about debris, leaves, dirt getting trapped behind the sign?
No, because it is up against the stone. It's not that there's not a 1 foot gap or anything like that behind the sign. So the only thing that I would see going behind the sign is the water, just because the profile of the stone isn't like this deep of,
Yeah.
ruts. So even if it was, that'd be up, we would clean that sign very regularly. And
Okay, I would just.
we could flash the top as well, the contractor said, flash it so that everything runs off the top and just out.
Yeah, I was going to suggest something along those lines, because my concern is just debris, like over the years, just grit and dirt that comes down the wall, getting caught in there and then degrading the stone, so.
Sure, so this was tailored towards where would the water go. So we left it so the water would go, but the other option is Z-flash it at the top, seal it, Z-flash it, and then the water would kick out over the sign and off.
Come down.
And then so would every other debris.
Okay. Any more questions from the commission? Okay, can we have a motion on this?
I motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Members, no? Okay, with that, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye?
Aye.
Okay, so congratulations. Hopefully, that'll get you moving. Apologize for
We're
the
still getting
delay.
those doors open regardless while we get this done, so.
Thanks for the detail.
We'll see you soon.
So item number 2, which would be new business, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
Is the Sandusky Library, and I'm also including the Erie County Jail since it's now attached to the library and they do have the same address, but in their support, I did separate them just so there's less confusion.
Okay.
So the site is located at 114 West Adams Street. It is a contributing structure to the National Register. That is the library and also the Erie County Jail. They were applied separately, so just so that's aware for the commission. The library is where I'm going to start. The structure was built prior to 1825 and has been in use as a library since 1825. According to records, there wasn't anything previously stating what it was used for, when exactly it was built. Only thing the register knows is that it was built prior to 1825. It was accepted into the National Register for Historic Places in 1975. So going back to the inventory of the 1974 application, one thing that the reviewers stated was that this impressive structure is made from limestone that was quarried on Monroe Street in Sandusky. The walls are over 2 feet thick. The central doorway has an octagonal tower on each side of it. Circular amber glass is used on the doors and the doorway. Vestibule leads to 2 wings on each side. So they were connecting that to the important features of the structure. And then the Ohio Historic Inventory of 1979 states the following: twin turrets, decorative stone panels with book between main doors, arches, pilasters, dormers, stone window caps, water table, stone band around building on the first floor. So the turrets are a significant feature, which is why we brought this to Landmark Commission today. The applicant seeks to replace the sheet metal on the turrets with bird spikes. This includes the slanted square sections on the turrets along the base of the turret window sills. And they wish to remove the existing sheet metal due to the fact that they believe birds have begun making nesting sites underneath current sheet metal. And they also believe the sheet metal is not original to the building's architecture, but was added later on to prevent the birds from nesting. So they're worried that having these in place is actually causing damage to the existing limestone of the turret. And they also believe the bird spikes will better match the historical integrity of the building. So,
Can I jump in?
yeah, go ahead.
So if you can look on the bottom right photo, you can see that kind of gray slanted material. That's sheet metal that's covering up the original divot of the turret. And we asked the architect to kind of explain this more to us, because usually the guidelines will lead us to not remove anything that's been added if it in itself has historic value. And so that's why we decided not to approve this administratively, was to bring it to you. We believe that removing them will restore it more accurately to its original look, and the bird spikes will actually be less noticeable. But since it's a change, that's why we wanted to bring it to your attention. Sorry, Alec, you're probably going to say that.
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, so since this is an alteration to a historic structure, that's why we brought it to you as well. And that's on our guidelines and the national guidelines when they reference significant features. That's the most relevant language. So the sheet metal coverings are not believed to be original design or original material to the building, and therefore staff doesn't believe it is a distinctive material nor contributing to the historic significance of this structure. In this instance, keeping birds from damaging the original material is a priority. Staff is comfortable with the architect's recommendation that the spikes will do a significantly better job at preventing damage and then also restoring historic integrity to the building. So that being said, staff recommends granting the certificate of appropriateness for the bird spike systems.
Okay, do you want us to take each of these items individually?
That's how we've done
It's probably easier.
in the past. It's completely up to the commission if you guys want me to go through every.
I'll get confused, so I do one at a
okay.
time.
Simple minds. Okay, members have any comments, questions?
I mean, to me, this seems like absolutely it's something that is going to improve things. If you look at that sheet metal, it almost looks like there's like caulk or something around it, which certainly isn't original at all. As far as the spikes go, I mean, you guys said it, what color is the spikes going to be?
Through the chair, we do have the architect here, so if you have technical questions, they can, I don't know if you want to direct any
Sure, if you'd
questions
like
to them.
if you'd like to comment, please.
Or what kind? Like, are they metal? Are they plastic? Are they?
They're metal. Oh, Kevin Kennedy with HPM Architects.
Hi.
It's Kevin.
They're metal. I'm not sure if they're stainless steel or aluminum, but they would be silver. Don't think you'd really be able to see them from
You wouldn't
street
know.
level.
From the
I have a cat you can borrow if the spikes.
How many legs does your cat actually have?
3 now.
Okay. Any other questions? Nicole?
So I guess the sheet metal, what's the background on that? Like, when was that put on? Do we know anything like that?
Staff's unaware of the exact date. Unfortunately, it wasn't in any records that we could find.
Yeah, we couldn't find pictures that you could see it really clearly. We think that it was added to keep birds out of those, and it was not original. So this was the first intervention to keep birds out, which is now failing, and the ask is to replace it with a newer intervention for the birds.
So would that sheet metal come off?
Yeah, we're
Yes.
going to pull that off, and we'll make sure what's behind it is cleaned up and properly sealed or caulked, and then we'll put the bird spikes on it so the pigeons won't be landing in there.
Just want to make sure I was clear on that.
Just for clarity, have you removed any of that sheet metal yet to see what is underneath it?
We have not, no.
Any other questions on the bird spikes? Okay, can we have a motion on the item 1?
I motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 None opposed, thank you.
So the second part to this application is the old Erie County Jail. It was built in 1883 by Adam and George Fike, and is now attached to the Sandusky Library. It is listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1982, and the 1981 inventory states the following in regard to the building's important features. An imposing tower rises from the double-door entry sandstone banding trim the limestone above the floor, window and floor lines, a decorative dormer window, and a how do you pronounce that? Cupola?
I think it's a couple.
Couple.
Cupola on the roof line of the west wing contrasts with the massive body of the building. Triple front windows have colored glass upper panels. Clear glass transom is above the massive carved main doors. The west wing is an early addition. A rear addition was added in the 1960s, and this is an unusually fine example of the 19th century limestone monumental building. So this portion of the project involves replacing a piece of dilapidated cornice on the south side of the old county jail. And the proposal is to remove a portion of the original wooden cornice and replace it with fiberglass reinforced plastic that matches the original look and color as best as possible. The applicant has stated that this material was chosen over wood due to cost and durability and longevity. So the Sandusky Historic Guidelines state this: avoid removing cornice and frieze elements because the result is in a blank, unfinished look on a building. Repair these elements or replace them to match the original. Wood moldings and a variety of sheet metal shapes are available for such work. So the national standards for restoration of deteriorated features state this: deteriorated features from the restoration period will be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of the distinctive feature, the new feature will match the old design, color, texture, and where possible, materials. Supplemental notes: the architect, the architect has stressed that the original wood cornice on this portion of the building is beyond repair and must be replaced. Staff expressed the architectural significance of this building feature and the concerns that the portion proposed to be replaced with FRP would be visually different from the rest of the original wood cornice. The architect then explained the replaced portion of the cornice would be painted along with a fresh coat of paint on the remaining wood cornice to be indistinguishable from the historic wood. So based on talking with the architect and learning a little bit more about what this project entailed, staff felt comfortable and feels comfortable granting the certificate of appropriateness to replacing the cornice with the FRP material with the following conditions. And that's that the new work matches the old design, scale, color, and finish as stated by the architect, and that any salvageable materials that are original are to be preserved.
I will say just a couple more things and note to this, that these two pieces of the project are within a stack of really comprehensively prepared PDF documents of cleaning, tuck pointing, replacement and reconstruction of original elements, salvaging original elements. So they, overall, what we saw, they're being very careful to restore this building within the standards of the national historic preservation guidelines. And it was really only these two things, the bird spikes and this cornice, which we saw constituted a change that we wanted to make sure that you all saw. And I think that's good context just to know that we had a lot of confidence that this architect knows, what they're doing and they're really taking care to preserve the building. I also think the other note is it's significant to hear in the national guidelines, they note that like metal could be a replacement material. And I think, I don't know this is anecdotal, but if they're saying it was originally wood and metal's okay because metal was an acceptable newer product, they probably haven't been updated to note that FRP might be an acceptable newer product too. So the importance is that it's going to be durable and it's going to match the existing, which they're assuring us it will.
Any comments?
A couple of comments. We actually think that it is some kind of sheet metal rather than wood, and there may be some wood involved, but you can see sort of at the corners where it's separating.
Yeah.
It's a thin metal. Our plan, and we don't know the full extent of what's sort of falling apart, so we want to save as much of it as we can. But our plan is, once we get up there, to kind of make the determination. We know at least parts of the east and west cornice and the south are in bad shape. So our plan is to replace at least those. It turns out that the shop that got the bid for doing this replacement is 10 minutes from my office in Cleveland. So I stopped there one day. And I made them give me this piece. Now, this isn't our piece. This isn't our exact cornice, but I thought it was kind of cool, honestly, to bring up and show you guys. I don't know. You want me to walk it around?
No, that's,
We can see it, yeah.
But
That's helpful, thank you.
what they'll do is they'll take a piece of the cornice, back to the shop, and they'll measure it up and make a mold that exactly matches all the pieces.
Okay.
And what's nice is, in the shop, they'll be able to make the corners, seam together perfectly, so there'll be no issues with things not lining up
Right.
in the field. And this will be painted to match. And we're painting all of the cornice at the end of the project, so it'll all match perfectly.
Okay. Anything else from staff or from the applicant? No? Okay. Comments?
I obviously, I'm glad you brought that in because you can see that. I mean, to me, that looks a lot like wood. What Aaron brought up, the steel versus fiberglass, I mean, I think one of our roles on this commission is that, yes, we need to follow these guidelines as close as possible, but we also have to realize that we are in 2022, not 1985, so like I think there's a fine line of updating and using technology. The fact that this is going to get replaced with something that looks exactly like that wood, that's probably going to stand for another 100 years, and then they're going to have carbon fiber or something else that's going to go up there. So I think that this is a good solution.
Yeah, I mean, I agree as well. I hope once you guys get up there removing things, you don't need to come back and see us. But
Well, you never know.
Just one question for staff. So in the applications, this is from the national guidelines, is that right? The Interior
That's correct, yeah.
Secretary of State's. So I just like to note that, the Secretary of State guidelines do say replacement with a compatible substitute material. And it may later on say specifically what materials, but, I think it was probably written that way in order to stand the test of time when it came to new material, new products, so.
have you seen that product painted? I mean, does it take the paint as the existing?
It will take it very well, yeah. I think probably a lot of new buildings that you see that have cornices on them are probably this rather than.
Right.
And this can actually be textured to look like a stone. So they're very busy, this shop, on putting this all over the country.
Okay, any further discussion, conversation? All right, can we have a motion on item 2, as it refers to the cornice for the Old County Jail?
I make a motion that we approve.
I second.
Any further discussion amongst the commission? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
and motion passes. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to make a couple of closing comments on that. These two buildings are a significant part and a memorial part of our historic heritage here in Sandusky. So I'd staff just like to thank you again for taking the time and effort to do it correctly and for your patience to come here today and, go through this process.
Well, more to go.
One more.
One more to get. So we're going on to 404 Wayne, which is the Follett House Museum. They're looking for 3 different pieces today for approval, and that is the window replacement on the south side window on the top floor, covering original material, which is the fascia, and then also altering the original porch railing. The location is on Adams and Wayne Street, the corner of. This is a contributing structure to the National Register of Historic Places. The Follett House Museum was built somewhere between 1835 and 1837, and it was accepted into the National Register in 1974, and it is still used today as a museum. Starting with the window replacement. Did I miss a page here? There we go. The house was listed in, like I said, 1975, so here's a statement from 1974 in the application of significant features. The northernmost house of sandstone, which it's referring to this location map, is in the Greek Revival style. The basement floor is only a few steps below grade, as the house is built on bedrock. The most prominent architectural feature is the double carved stair leading to the small front porch at the main floor level. The porch has pre-Doric columns and entablature. The upper floor center window has a 3-part division. The frieze under the eaves has windows with fretwork grills. The hipped roof has a balustraded lookout. There's a second comment in this application on significant features, and it states, the Follett House is unquestionably one of the first-ranked Greek Revival mansions of Ohio. Structurally, it is somewhat anomalous and is built of a golden sandstone rather than gray native limestone of Sandusky. So going into the scope of work for the window, the applicant seeks to replace the southern-facing dormer window with a new Pella Reserve traditional window. And would the commission like me to read off the scope of work, or would you guys like to skip over that in the report?
Anybody? I'm comfortable with what's there.
Good.
Okay.
Anybody
I've
else?
read it.
Okay.
Okay. So the standards for the national standards for rehabilitation is that historic character of the property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or alteration of features and spaces that characterize a property shall be avoided. Where's our local? Staff believes this is an original window. It is not visible from the sidewalk or public right-of-way. Staff expressed concern that the replacement window would change the exterior character of the architecture. The architect expressed the condition of the existing window warrants its replacement rather than repair, and ensured the proposed window replacement will match the design and character of the original window, including the pattern and location of the muttons. So based on this conversation, staff recommends the granting of certificate of appropriateness for the replacement shed dormer window with the following conditions, and that's that the new work matches the old design, scale, color, and finish, and that any salvageable original materials are preserved.
Any questions? I guess I'll just very quickly, you've obviously made the expression that you think the window needs to be replaced. Would you like to just elaborate on that a little bit? Have you been up there and?
My office has been up
Yeah.
there and took pictures and poked around with a pen, and wood is rotted and it's in bad enough shape that to try and repair it would be pretty difficult. So we thought we would just replace it with a new window, especially given, and it should look very close, but it won't. You can't really see it from the ground at all. So
Yeah. And what's the condition of the frame? Or are you going to tear all that out, or just the window?
Just the window, but honestly, we're probably going to have to replace the trim
Yeah.
around it once it's back in place. We'll have to take that off to put it in and just leave the jambs as stand, unless they're rotted, in which case we'll have to replace those.
Any other questions? Okay, can I add a motion on item 1, the shed dormer window?
I motion to approve.
A second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's none opposed. That motion passes. Next is project scope item 2, the fascia.
The applicant proposes to install metal fascia along the skyward facing edge along the perimeter of the building for the purpose of preserving the existing wood fascia. Sandusky Preservation Guidelines states this. It is, a certificate of appropriateness is necessary when a change is made to the exterior of the property which involves any of the following actions, which is construction, reconstruction, or alteration of any property, structure, tree, sign, or object within the district. Architectural details specifically, cornice, friezes, ornamentation states this. Avoid adding cornice and frieze elements as extra ornamentation on a building unless physical or photographic evidence suggests the building once had these features. And to repair these elements or replace them to match the original, wood moldings and a variety of sheet metal shapes are available for such work. So there will be a feature added with this covering. If you look at the screen, it's in the red box. It may be small in nature, but it is an added detail worth noting. And then the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation is that new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect historic integrity of the property and its environment. The architect has explained the purpose of adding the flashing is to preserve the original historic wood fascia. The current wood fascia has been damaged over time due to water penetration and exposure to the elements. The existing wood fascia will be repaired and repainted as part of the project. Staff has expressed concerns with adding the metal fascia feature since it's not original to the building and the feature does not, and ensuring the added feature does not change the design of the aesthetic of the existing fascia, which is a significant feature of the building. The architect ensured that flashing would be installed with minimal change to the look of the cornice up close and would be nearly indistinguishable at the street level from the existing condition, and staff does believe this to be true. They reiterated the value the flashing would add to preserving the original wood from future deterioration. Remaining staff question is how long the wood fascia would last, only if they're based on their planned repair, if it was repainted and not covered. On average, how many years would that last before it would need to be recovered and protected again? Do you know off the top of your head?
Well, so to add to that, we're not sure, and I think you see one of the pictures where we're pushing in a screwdriver, and it's sort of punky on the top, but we're not sure how the extent of that. We talked to our contractor who's on board and asked if they could investigate that, and if it's not completely, ready to fall apart, if they might be able to repair and sand down a little bit so that there's positive drainage, not much, but just a little, and paint it, seal, I keep doing it, paint it, seal it, and we're willing to do that. We'd rather do that than put the sheet metal on top of it. But if it's destroyed, then we'll repair it to a point and have to put this on top of it just to stop the rot. So I don't know how you approach that if you approve this, but we won't do it unless we have to, or if you want to wait and see, advise you. But our druthers would be, let's just see if we can't repair it and get a little bit of slope, and then it'll be fine.
Did want to add 2 comments on the quotes that we pulled for you. We look for the most relevant information from our design guidelines and the historic guidelines. And in this one, it's hard to find something that's exact. So the one that they said, avoid adding extra ornamentation, this really doesn't, they're not, that's for people that will like try to put like scrolly things on that aren't, relevant to the historic integrity of their property. And this isn't really adding extra ornamentation. It's just one of the closest quotes we could find for you. And another one of the quotes about new work being differentiated from the past, that's more about like putting new additions on historic structures. So they're not extremely perfect to this case, and I just wanted to point that out to you if you're, looking at those really carefully. We went back and forth about this a bunch because at the end of the day, if you can't really tell from the street, it's probably not a bad thing to have on the building because it helps it out, but it also, cautions us to not add anything to buildings if we don't have to. So that's why we had a conversation about it and brought it to you today.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from commission?
Yeah, I mean, I
Comments?
feel more comfortable with the first suggestion that he had, see if they can repair it and do a slight angle on it. I don't know how we would go about to make sure that that was, if that's a feasible option, that we go with that one before adding something to it.
So I think we could approve this subject to it being necessary, essentially, and undertake your commitment that you would try to preserve the existing structure as it is first, and if it's not, just come back to staff and say, hey, we're going to have to go ahead and install this metal fascia.
Yeah.
I think that would take care of the,
Yeah, kind of like a
Like
last
provide
resort.
some evidence or something that, hey,
yeah.
show these guys like that this is why it has to have.
Right, so we would just need in a motion to make sure that we worded it such that this was approved in the event it is necessary. That's probably all we need to add. Correct? Any thoughts from staff or?
The only thought I have on that is that it didn't just happen in like pieces, parts, that it would be uniform
Yeah.
to whatever, the whole side or the whole building if you have to do it.
Yeah, that was the other
you
thing
know.
I was going to ask, is it would be consistent the entire,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Any further questions or discussions? Okay, can I have a motion then that reflects the issue of necessity?
Yeah, I will make a motion that we approve based on, being the final, or the necessity of the project, or I don't know exactly how to word it.
We could say something like,
It's broke, fix it.
a motion to approve the staff recommendation item 2, subject to it being necessary to the preservation of the building.
I second that, whoever said it.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that is approved, again, subject to the need for it being there. Item 3.
So moving on to the second floor porch decorative railing. The current railing is anchored to the porch floor, with posts sunk into the floor slab. The original installation has led to rust and deterioration of the railing and deterioration of the porch floor, the rock and stone involved. The applicant proposes to detach the current railing from its current position in order to restore it for reinstallation. The proposed reinstallation includes a new type of anchor using a steel sleeve welded to a new steel plate, if you see the left image on the screen, an anchor to the existing slab porch floor. This solution will result in the railing to be installed at up to 2 inches higher than its current position. Our Sandusky preservation guidelines for this, or at least the closest one to it, a certificate of appropriateness is necessary when a change is being made to the exterior of the property, which involves any of the following actions: construction, reconstruction, or alteration, in this case, of any property structure, et cetera. Porches and stoops on page 16 specifically says porches and stoops, whether original or latter additions, shall be preserved in their historic forms. If they are deteriorated, they should be repaired to their original condition. And then the national standards state that materials and features from the restoration period will be retained and preserved. The removal of materials or alteration of feature spaces and spatial relationships, so in this case, the 2 inches, that characterize the period will not be undertaken. Deteriorated features from the restoration period will be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of the deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature will match the old and design color, texture, and materials. So supplemental notes from staff, and staff applauds the undertaking of restoring the iconic piece of the Follett house and the railing, and the care the applicant has taken to preserve the detailed ironwork of this railing as well. The architect explained why the proposed reinstallation using a steel sleeve is preferred to attempting to install the original fashion by anchoring it to the porch slab. This method led to the deterioration of the porch itself. I was trying to find a good picture of it, but in your right-hand corner, you can kind of see the rusting and a little bit of the degradation of the stone. So staff expressed concern that the aesthetics of the steel sleeve would deter from the character of the railing and its originality, and expressed preference that the installation be as minimalistic as possible with flush bolts as possible and match the existing color of the railing. So based on that, staff recommends the granting of the certificate of appropriateness for the proposed porch railing with the following conditions. And that's that the steel sleeve installation is minimalistic, matches the railing design, color, texture to the max extent possible, and that, mixed them up. I've been the only one. I think that was the only condition.
That was, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Any comments on that?
Not really.
Okay.
The intent is to take that entire railing off of the building, bring it into a shop, and then we clean it up and repair and replace the parts at the bottom that have rusted into nothingness, and then bring it back out, put it back in. So.
Just one question for me, is the reason for the 2-inch height differential just the sleeve itself and the mounting mechanism?
No, it is, the railing is really low, and
Okay.
we thought while we're at it, we'll raise it up a little higher just for, safety.
Okay, is that a code issue, or is it a?
Well, it could be a code issue if it were a modern building, it would be a code issue. So since we're doing all this work to it and putting it back, we thought we would
And raising it 2 inches would bring it into current code compliance?
close to code, yeah. I don't think we'd get quite all the way up.
Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion?
I motion to approve.
I guess I just have a quick question for staff. Did you guys see any issue with the 2-inch raising of it, like taking away from the original?
It's really hard to say whether that would be noticeable to the naked eye from the street. That's really the preservation. What we're tasked with is preserving the character, which is generally from the public right-of-way. So exacting eyes might be able to tell the difference, but I don't know that it's significant enough to warrant, question. We wanted to make sure to bring it to you, and the sleeve and how the sleeve looked and that being, a minimal intervention, I thought was important. And the 2 inches for discussion, but.
Okay.
Okay. You had a motion, right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any other discussion then? I guess my view on the 2-inch height increase is, while probably technically it would be an alteration to spatial relationships, first of all, as Aaron says, it's minimal, and if it adds to the safety of that raised kind of portico, then, I don't see that that's, I think the good outweighs the bad, essentially. That would be my view. Any other comments?
No.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And that is approved. Thank you. I'd just like to say to the library board in particular, but also to the architects, thank you very much for the work you're doing in preserving all of these buildings. I've sort of seen some of the work that's going on, and And they're such important parts of our downtown heritage and our history, and, it's to be commended. So, well done, thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll turn it back, and thank you very much, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. Is that it?
They have some other business too.
Okay.
Yeah, we have other business. Mr. Griffiths had approached us before November's meeting or prior to. I can't really recollect about looking into how we can measure the lumens
Oh,
for
yeah.
these internally illuminated signs. I had spoken with Ryan Brady and then Nathan Glass at Brady Signs on how could we determine a good process of what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And they gave me some pretty good feedback. So what they told me is currently measuring the light output of a sign accurately can only be done after the sign's put up and after it's illuminated. So finding a way to put a lumen restraint on it would be pretty tough, just given that. So a light meter would have to go out to the site and determine the lumens. So let's just say it's over by 500 lumens, then are we gonna make them take it down? Because it's kind of hard to judge prior to. So factors to consider if we're gonna go through and try to find the best case scenario to solve this issue is kind of a translucent material versus non-translucent material argument. So the less translucent the material the sign is, the less it allows light to go out of it. Square footage of allowable translucent material on a sign face, the color of the material, lumens of the bulb inside, color of the bulb, size of the sign, and the color of the sign itself. So like, for example, a plastic face that has a white background, it will have higher lumen output than, the internally illuminated signs that we so far have deemed appropriate. So the larger the area of the translucent material, more light can escape. So finding a way to measure that area could be significant. So here's an example. Internally illuminated signs are not currently allowed by Landmarks Commission, as we know, which is why we're here talking about this. However, staff feels when tastefully designed that they could be very aesthetically pleasing and bring a lot more effect and positivity to the downtown, just from a design standard. As you can see, what's not appropriate versus what could be appropriate, I think.
I love that it's Nashville.
Of course.
Get Sandusky rocking.
Yeah.
So I think to the left is what we all agree is why it's in place, is what we're trying to avoid, are these bright internally illuminated signs, trying to catch your attention, where we think there's appropriate approach that's tasteful and could, meet the end goal of having internally illuminated signs that are a positive feature in downtown. So just some thoughts to consider. This kind of goes back to what I mentioned in the first slide. It's just more of the design standard approach on what's allowed on the sign. So the materials, square footage allowed of the lettering, the translucent space or the sign in general, percentage on how much the translucent space can be. So 25% can be translucent, or however we want to go about that. The lumen bulb output, how many lumens it's going from the inside. And then the colors, non-translucent sign face, translucent lettering, and also the light bulb. All these colors of the sign, of the bulb, cool versus warm, lighting, all affect what the external illumination is projecting. So that was kind of the takeaway from Brady Signs, is we should probably take this approach, if any, because they don't feel that putting a lumen restriction on it would be the best case to solve this issue. And here is a local example. I don't think it's perfect for what we're trying to accomplish, but they more or less have an excessive brightness definition, which is 10-foot candles per square foot, or 10 lumens per square foot. So if there's a 30 square foot sign that's permitted downtown that's internally illuminated, they would be allowed to have 30 lumens, 300 lumens, which could be low, could be high. I wish we had a better gauge, but they do also have a definition for excessive brightness and how to avoid excessive brightness. And it does talk about the type of sign and the materials just a little bit, but I think we could take it a step further if we were to go forward.
Okay.
So a couple more comments, and then before y'all chat us up about it. Alec talked to one sign company, so we could go forward and talk to a couple other sign companies and see what they say. If you want to make a motion to kind of direct us to find other example guidelines for you to choose between, to update our design guidelines, something like that, you could do that today. Before that, I will mention our other piece of other business is we have gone after a grant from the Certified Local Government Program, which we are certified local government, and through the State Historic Preservation Office. We wrote a grant proposal to them for just shy of $20,000 to do a comprehensive update to our design guidelines. If we are awarded that, there was kind of three major things we pointed out in that grant application. If you'd like to read it, I'd be happy to send it along. One is that our current design guidelines conflict with our landmark ordinance because they talk about the downtown historic district, and it's confusing to applicants. So that needs cleaned up. There's, we would like specific guidance for rooftops and outdoor patios, which we don't have right now. And then also we could take on, and it was in the grant proposal, that we would be able to update our signage and illuminated signage design guidelines at that time. So if you're comfortable waiting to see if we get that money, and that could be part of that scope of project, we could do that as well. I think that what they said is that we would probably get the money in by July, and then we would have until early 2023 to adopt them. It would probably be like a 6 to 9 month process, depending on how long it took we'd probably get a consultant that had specialty in historic preservation to do the research for us and work with us and with you all to come up with that update. So that's the other piece of other business we wanted to share before you kind of open up this combo.
Just one question, do you know the decision date for that grant?
I do not, but I can look at that because somebody asked me that the other day.
Okay.
He said that you probably wouldn't get the money till July. I know they're on the federal fiscal year, so I'm assuming we would know by May or June
Yeah.
or something, but maybe not get the money until July. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on?
I think we should maybe look at a few more examples. We often talk a lot in other meetings and our city plans and things like that. And we bring up a lot of towns. I know we bring up, how am I blanking? Town in Michigan, great brewery town. Anyway.
Kalamazoo?
Not Kalamazoo.
Grand Rapids?
Grand Rapids. We talk about Grand Rapids a lot.
Booth comes up occasionally.
Comes up. Like maybe we look at some of those other towns that we've talked about in the past that we're trying to emulate a bit, while being an individual, of course. And then see what kind of guidelines they have.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need more examples and a little bit more research on that.
Is there any other cities that you could think of that you'd like us to look at between?
The one it's not the city, but the district that comes to mind is the kind of old quarter of Boston, where they have much more restrictive signage rules than we have, but I'd just be interested to see what they have about lighting and illumination of signs. I mean, I think the point about illuminated signs versus floodlights is an interesting one, so, maybe it kind of all comes together.
Check out, I'm saying this because I was just there for 30 days straight, Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and I was sending a lot of people photos. Similar, if you look at their downtown Main Street, the signs on the buildings are pretty quiet, but yet they still have like the lights and things like that. Yeah. So I think we have to think about that too. So I think that's a good example. So I mean, I kind of like the idea of maybe a tourist town, because, in the ski world, but maybe a beach community as well, because we were kind of a blend of all those things, and certainly as we try to think about winter and things getting busier around here, I think we should look at a little bit of both. So Steamboat is a great example, I think.
And maybe the other one that comes to mind is Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh, that's a good call.
So, having just been there last year. Nice town. Very cool. The one thing I will say is
no, just kidding, sorry.
What I like about the Westlake example is just having a standard that you can say, look, we're going to, if there's a dispute or something that people think might be appropriate, having a standard you can say, look, we're just going to stand whatever it is 3 feet away and measure it. And if it exceeds this limit, then you do have to take the sign down. And so you design your sign and go talk to the company that's doing this with the understanding that this is the right of arc, if you like. This is where we're rights this way, but you know what I mean. I was in the Army, not engineering.
You were good for the cameras.
So, being able to at least to say, we have an absolute limit that you can't exceed is probably helpful.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I think that it would be hard to make something too bright if it has a dark background, so it could be possible solution
Yeah.
to say that we won't approve anything with a fully transparent background and dark lettering, because that, except for like the State Theater marquee is the only place that's allowed to have a white background and, put up letters or something. In the-
Right. The example that I would use that we have approved in the time that I was on this commission are the church signs, one for Grace Episcopal and one for, I'm going to forget the name of the church now, but the one on Columbus Ave, partway down. And certainly, those two visually look very different and were approved using essentially the same process. And just personally, I like one a lot more than I like the other one. So that's kind of a lot of where this came from. So, and then the other piece I would say is I think if we're, hopeful of getting a pot of funding to do this in May, June, then I think it's probably prudent to wait until as part of that process than necessarily spend a ton of time on it now. But you might want to maybe just use the time to, make sure you've got a tight scope of work for whoever's doing that so they understand the kind of comparisons we're looking for.
And that grant's already been applied for?
Yes,
Yeah.
we submitted it last Friday.
And do you want to, you want to talk a bit more about that, or we covered that?
I think I covered everything.
Okay.
It's an annual program. We've applied in the past. They recommended that you submit a draft, and we submit a couple drafts to them, and they helped us make it stronger. So we got some great feedback, especially because our current guidelines conflict with our ordinance. That was, he made a mention that was a very compelling argument. So I think
Okay.
hopefully we've got a good shot at it. I think it's a reasonable amount of money just to give us an update. We won't get like a whole new set of guidelines, but I think we could get a really nice update for that amount of money.
Perfect.
We didn't have, the
Yeah.
city had no local match was required, so
Okay.
it would be fully grant funded.
And they turned us down last time, so. Gotta do it twice.
Third time we'll have to get on there in March.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else from staff?
That's all for me.
One other thing I just thought of is that we're looking at the potential for adding historic districts this year that we want to chat with you about. A couple places that have been floated around is the Hancock corridor. There's a lot of historic structures around, like, think about like the old antique shop down like just north of Monroe down to Reese Street or something around those lines. So I thought, I've done a little sketch, we've talked about it internally, but that's something we'd like to maybe bring to you. Another one that we've heard tossed around the idea is what I've been calling like Midtown Columbus Avenue, down by where the clock
5
tower
points.
is.
5
Yeah.
points there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, we have several 5 points in the city, but maybe 5 points, whatever that would, there's a kind of a node right there of.
Hayes
some-
Ave and Columbus Ave, that.
Yeah,
kind
where
of
that all
area.
comes together,
Yeah.
East and West Park. So.
Yeah. Okay.
You have any thoughts on that, feel free to email us, and we'll bring you something more substantial in the future if you think that it's a good idea to pursue one or more of those.
Cool. Okay, thank you. I think that's it. We have a motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn? Yep, I motion.
Oh, second?
and we are adjourned. Thank you very